This podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
If you look deeply into the palm of your hand, you will see your parents and all generations of your ancestors. All of them are alive at this moment. Each is present in your body. You are the continuation of each of these people. Thich Nhat Hahn. With conscious engagement of our ancestral roots, we become more grounded and comfortable within ourselves as we feel the support of thousands of people who dreamed us into reality. Valeria interviews Jenhudziec. She is the author of Ancestral Healing, a guided journal for observations, reflections, and connections with your ancestors. Jen is a certified ancestral lineage repair practitioner, death doula, educator, ritualist, and fire walk instructor. As an animist, she has spent decades integrating earth-honoring practices with her former Catholic upbringing, while reviving the traditions of her Slavic ancestors. She holds relationality at the heart of her practice, and passionately supports others to reclaim their intuitive capacities, engage with their ancestors, find peace with mortality, and prepare for the threshold of death. Jen is a first-generation American who knows the deep wound around lack of belonging and the struggle to maintain connection to her cultural roots. Her people are Slavic, Polish, Ukrainian, Russian, Czech, Germanic, and Scandinavian. She tends traditional Abanaki land in New Hampshire and offers private sessions, rituals, education, and group circles. Meet Jen at jenhudziec.com. Here's the interview with Jenhudziec.
In your own words, who is Jenhudziec?
Thank you for asking. Yeah, so Jenhudziec, who am I? Oh, I am an ever-evolving species. I really am. I am the granddaughter of Hedwig and Raymond and Rudolph and Geraldine, and I am the daughter of Linda and Ernest. And I have a long history of being connected to my ancestors. And I am of Eastern Slavic, Scandinavian, and Germanic descent. And I'm currently stewarding land in New Hampshire. Yeah, I am just seeking all the time and allowing myself to be open to receive and really trying to live a life of curiosity. I'm a ritualist, and I am an ancestral lineage repair practitioner, a death doula, and I have been so many incantations of other things throughout my life. But more presently, these are the definitions. These are the places that I am exploring in my practice and in my life.
That's wonderful to hear. It's refreshing and wonderful at the same time, because I do hear the wisdom of self-knowledge and self-exploration from any angle, really. Because intuitively, I have this idea, this message that every experience leads us to the truth sooner or later. So there's something about the way you responded to that question that kind of fulfilled, the intuitive kind of reflection. I never heard this way before, I have to mention. Somebody who, I have interviewed so many people, but nobody answered the way you did. Actually saying the names of the people that came before you. Of course, there are a lot more probably than that, right? A lot more names, but you mentioned some of them. So this is a good time to ask you about ancestors, that open question. What are ancestors?
Yeah. Wow. That's such a broad and beautiful question. And for me right now, I see, my definition, my experience of ancestors is really of an energetic matrix that we evolve from, that we come from. And of course, there are many other influences there that create who we are as individuals. But our ancestors are really our root system. I named a few by name, but we really have thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of people throughout history and time that have created us, energetically, emotionally, physically. And so they're not separate from us. They are us and we are them. And there's very much this idea that they exist outside of us. But my experience is that they work through us, they weave through us, they inspire us, they hold us, and that, we are really a piece of the larger web with them. So, yeah, yeah. So really they really feel like this net, this web that is consistently holding us along with everything else, right? Like the planet and the animals and the plants and in this larger framework of animism, our ancestors are just one component of that.
Yes. It's interesting to hear when you say they are us, we are them. Yes. It's a challenge to think about ourselves as an individual then, right, Jen?
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely.
These days, I don't know, this has been actually forever the question of who am I? And has been one of the most fundamental and profound questions we can ask ourselves. So when I hear that, what you just said, the statement, they are us, we are them, that makes a lot of sense to me, you see, to my brain. And for most people, probably it doesn't, because they are looking for that fixed self. That right, there's something that we can identify as our own unique self.
Yes.
But it's always composed of parts anyway. And if you go deeper into it, there's no fixed anything in looking for that self, for that something that we think we are. Yeah, I would love to hear a little bit more from you about this fundamental question of who am I, and how do we are we actually trying to find something that is consistent, or it's okay to actually be all these people that we are influenced by, or part of them, or are they, as you say?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think, when we hold ourselves in this fixed position of individuality, our, our thinking and our perspective becomes really narrow. We really focus in on the microscopic. And when we do that, we can isolate, we can really feel lonely, we can feel like we have a lack of support, a lack of connectivity, and our problems can seem so big and so monumental and, overwhelming. And when we broaden our perspective to include our ancestors, we realize that our, perhaps some of our issues or our patterns or things that are manifesting in our lives it's really part of a larger system. We're just, we are that individual, but we are also part of a larger system. And some of the things that we carry don't just belong to us in our little microscopic universe. They really broaden out to be included in this larger network. And when we hold that larger perspective, we realize that there is a lot of resources available to us. There is connectivity, there is community. There are all those things that are available to us when we work with our ancestors in a really conscious way. And suddenly, our problems that we're dealing with, they can have less gravity. And that's not to minimize,
Right.
any of what we go through,
Right.
but to also see the things we carry as larger systemic issues that have woven in and out of our own individual ancestry, um, can provide some type of comfort in a
Mhm.
way, although it's not the comfort,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
we
We think.
necessarily are used to or we crave, but there is
Right.
an understanding that comes into play.
Yes, beautifully said.
Yeah.
That understanding, that's crucial for clarity. I love the large perspective, big picture idea, because that is exactly what I've been looking for my entire life. Something that would give me that larger perspective. I talked to you briefly off record, has been this very broad idea that everything is essentially one reality. So it's almost like saying that everything's made of the same substance,
Mm.
everything and everyone. So in that sense, when I got to understand that, to realize that, then it's almost like the entire humanity became my family, my
Yes.
ancestry in a sense. So now I'm not looking for even my immediate family members or my grandparents, my parents. I'm not looking for them or into their history to find out more about me. But it's a spiritual perspective, of course, but it's also one that can lead us to live not just peaceful lives for ourselves, but to to expand that to others. That's how
Yes.
I feel. I'm kinder to others because I'm kind to myself, because I know my own essence.
Mm.
So, how would that fit in within the work you do, Jen? If I was working with you, for example, of course, we all have challenges. And as I mentioned off record, too, I have some challenges every month with the
Mm.
women's friend. Before it's here, there's a lot of more anxiety, and the body seems to be craving certain things, even foods or even expression. I'm a lot more expressive for some reason, and I'm saying things that I usually don't say. Well, I would kind of be more careful. Always in a kind way, but it's almost like there's this urge to speak the truth to everybody that I meet, in a sense, if there's an opportunity, like with my husband. It's almost like, oh, this is urgent. You must talk more about these things with people around me. So, yeah, talk to me about how would that fit into the ancestral healing work that you do.
Yeah. So I think you're specifically speaking about cycles of our body.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that, our ancestors, and I'm speaking specifically of ancestors of blood and bone, also knowing that, we have many different types of ancestors, nature as an ancestor, land
yes,
as an ancestor,
yes.
spiritual ancestors. So there are
Yes.
many,
Mm,
many, many different um, segments, if you will,
yeah.
also knowing that they're all part of the larger consciousness. But
Right. Right.
our ancestors of blood and bone, they went through incredible trials and tribulations of the
Yes.
body, and
Yeah.
how they have sought food and how they have created shelter and how they have gone through phases of disease and plague and all of those um, all of those experiences, I think, for the ones who lived through them, and the ones who did not, there's a sense of resiliency there in the body. And even the ones who perished because of plague or war or famine, I sense that we hold those experiences as well, and we cycle through those in our own lives, when we have, different orientations to how we nourish ourselves or how we work with food. And we have different cycles, as women with how, our menstrual cycles move and flow. And, all of this, I think, can be a reflection and is a reflection of how our people, how our ancestors in their physical bodies also went through these seasons with their physicality, and all of the challenges that they had to face. And so I think we hold those pieces, and they come up at different times for us throughout our lives, throughout the different seasons of our lives.
Yes. Yeah. That resonates true to me. Everything is, in a way, registered by the body. So it's here.
Yeah.
It's not even about letting it go, but I would love to ask about the programs that you offer for ancestral healing. What is the process? How does it work?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. Yeah, so the process is based in a framework that was developed by a man named Dr. Daniel Four. And the framework is one where you step into this place of really getting grounded and embodied. And that's really the first step, is really making sure that you are aware of and conscious within your physical body, so that you can really anchor into that ancestral DNA, and you can have a real solid base of support. And then there is this process of connecting to whatever it is that you are identifying with as a higher power, a trusted power. So you're pulling in support on an energetic, spiritual, intuitive level. The other piece is ritual safety. And so creating a space and a container where ritual safety, meaning boundaries, having a safe, secure, energetic space that you're doing the work in, is really pivotal. And so there's these three foundational pieces, and then we move into identifying through a process that involves an assessment into which lineage right now is the lineage that would be the most appropriate to begin with. So not necessarily moving straight into the most toxic lineage, right? We all have an idea of which line in our families holds a lot of charge. And so not necessarily going right directly into the troubles, but really evaluating all of our lines, and looking at what's safe, what feels connected, and what feels right for this moment. And we really work then to create an ancestral guide connection, because this is a journey that we really can't go it alone, and we don't want to. So the process is one of co-creation with an ancestral guide. We call it, a guide or an energy that really steps forward to assist with the healing of the lineage. And through that process, we work with the guide, and we look at the blessings and the burdens of the lineage. We hold a container for all of those in the lineage who aren't spiritually well. We, we do ritual, we make offerings. And, in the end, the idea is that we can then become the face of our lineage, knowing that the lineage has received healing, that there's clarity throughout, that any troubles have been addressed, that there has been an individual and also cultural, systemic issues that have been looked at and excavated, so to speak, and extending all of that goodness of our line through all of our living ancestors, having that land with us so that our work in the world can be held by and fueled with really positive, healed ancestral energy. So, yeah, so without going on and on and on, that's it in a nutshell, which
Yes.
isn't exactly concise, but, and it's pretty vague, but at the same time, having a step-by-step framework to really lean into really holds the process, for people who are ready and willing to step forward into this type of intuitive healing work.
It's fascinating. Even the thought of getting to do the work, being open to go in on this journey, it's just incredibly enriching to me. It sounds like, although I have never done it, but it feels that way because it is intuitive. I believe to all of us that we are being guided. It's very clear to me, but I know for some of us it might be just a thought. Oh, it feels like, it sounds like, but the brain takes over in a sense of the logical brain, and then you just kind of
Yes.
dismiss everything. But I have had many experiences where that's exactly the feeling, and I'm certain that I was being guided by, I can say someone. Oh, there's not a something. So there were entities that they were trying to help me with challenges in a very clear way. It's almost like paranormal in a way, you can say, because
Right.
you can see even things, me doing things that I would never do. Why am I doing this? It's like fascinating like that. And the logical, my mind logical brain kind of finds it fascinating, like, wow, interesting, because I'm very curious and I don't push away anything. But it's truly amazing when we wake up for this truth that we're not fixed,
Yeah.
that we are just, we are, I love the way you say these things, but I cannot kind of remember the exact words. I love the way you said that before. They are us, we are them. So everything is interconnected. There's no separation, really, none. And that's basically what my understanding is, which is, it's truly beautiful, but it is impersonal too at the same time, because I'm not trying to look for a person in me. So it's almost like an impersonal, personal beauty, personal wisdom, infinite
Mm.
wisdom.
Infinite, yes.
Yeah, it's definitely infinite, limitless. So there's some that I want to ask you. Yes. Is your work considered spiritual?
I That's a great question. Is my work considered spiritual? In the context when you position spiritual and religious, when you take those two and and you compare them, and if ancestral lineage repair had to fall in one or the other, to
Yes.
be
Yeah.
binary for a moment,
Yeah. Yes.
I would say that it is spiritual in
Uh-huh.
nature, and yet
Mm,
people who are drawn to ancestral lineage healing, some of them don't necessarily consider themselves to be a spiritual, to have a spiritual practice or to be a spiritual being. And so I think, that definition is different for everyone, but there is the component of um, having an understanding of, or at least being open to that concept of consciousness and of, animistic principles, which is, the idea that there is life force, there is consciousness imbued in everything. And if somebody holds that as a possibility, then ancestral healing falls within that realm and, perhaps under that broader umbrella of spirituality.
yes. Well,
Yeah.
it sounds very spiritual to me, I have to say.
Yes.
I have to say, yes, that's the word that I often use in consciousness, pure consciousness with infinite, impersonal, timeless, limitless. So that really resonates true. And when I read about your work and listening to you now, that's what it comes to mind immediately as an energetic resonance. Even listening to your voice, the sound of it, how you choose the words and the rhythms, that's like, beautiful. It's something's here being revealed right here, right now. And that consciousness is here. So another question is about the signs. What are the signs when we need ancestral lineage repair? What would be the signs?
Yeah. Wow. There's a myriad of signs.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when I take stock of all the people that I have worked with to date as a practitioner of this work, the sign that seems to be the most common thread is the one that is the least able to be defined by language.
Yes.
Right? So
Right.
there
Yeah.
is that that sense. There's a sense, there is a feeling, there is a pull. I mean, these are the words that, that have been told to me. Like, I sensed it, I felt it, I was called, I was pulled. And so, whatever that resonance is, that magnetism, that I think is the first and most common sign. And then, there are other signs, there are synchronicities that happen in a person's life that become undeniable. And those synchronicities they become immune to self-doubt, right? Those are the things that we can no longer deny. And so there's the synchronicities. Sometimes people will have a really clear sign. Um, sometimes the call is more subtle. So it happens differently for everyone, but I think that people get to a point where they're no longer feeling an alignment in their lives. And that lack of alignment can look like feeling, like a really deep lack of belonging. They can feel exhausted with the intergenerational trauma and wounds that are erupting in their lives. They can have a sense of feeling like really unrooted. Um, so those are some of the more like emotional manifestations that can arise, that become the calling that something is needed. There is an interaction, there is an intervention that is needed. And then there's this synchronicity that happens that opens the world of ancestral healing to them, and people step in.
Yes, that also makes a lot of sense to me. So, in a way, we are being guided to healing, to those spiritual understandings, to clarity, to pure consciousness, right? That really also, that resonates true to me, especially because my own experiences and also because I talk to a lot of people. And I talked to somebody, I interviewed somebody, I think it was 2 years ago, a year ago, I'm not sure, about spirit possession. That really resonated like it was something, an ancestry type of thing. Her work, it's basically to identify what's holding you back, like what is in you, attached to you, that is leading you to not necessarily a good place, or to act, to behave, to think in a positive way that can help yourself and others. So she called it, it's almost like, it sounded a little bit like The Exorcist. I'm not sure. Do you remember that movie? Yeah.
The Exorcist, yes.
Heck yeah. It sounds,
Yes.
I mean, I wanted to laugh, but I didn't. And I shouldn't anyway. But it sounds funny, I know, but it made sense to me when I was listening to her husband, actually, because she doesn't do interviews. So she's like so quiet herself in meditation and doing her work that her husband answers the questions and does all this. So anyway, it got the feeling that was the case, of course, with my own experiences, acting in ways that I knew they were not in alignment. And then the curious mind asking, what does is it coming from? Where is this coming from? Why am I having these thoughts? So in trying to almost like and I know that there was a part of me that was looking into the behavior and those actions and kind of questioning everything. So and then I became curious about that one that was that was asking the questions. And then I guess the closer I got to that, see, but I don't know who the I is anyway. Now there's another I that's looking to that one who is asking questions. And then it went on and on and on to the point where it's almost going back, back, back. And now there's nowhere to go backwards. And then you're left with this being what it is. And to the point of now, I would say I'm just open to everything that is here. So I'm not really trying to push away, even if it's a bad thought. And I know how. And then I just ask the question, oh, that's what you want me to see? And then I'll listen to. And then show me what else, what more. And then it goes away. It's almost like a smoke. It disappears. And then that's my practice because I know it's everything here. It's passing. It's not really stable. It won't stay. I guess the question, is this something that you would work with as well? People who are, because I get emails, which is interesting about that interview. They saying like things like, oh, I have these thoughts, kind of strange thoughts. And then maybe, do you recommend that I could contact this person? Because I heard the interview, you interviewed her husband about her work. And so I guess the question is that something that it would fit within the work you do as well, Jen, or this is something else?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Not all of our ancestors are well, and
Right,
not all of
right,
our ancestors are,
right.
that gold star standard of, just glowing, beautiful, benevolent. We tend to
Yes,
think like, oh, as soon
yes.
as people die, they become this thing.
Right,
Um,
right,
and
right. Wow.
in my experience and what I believe is that that's not always true. There is an evolution of consciousness that continues to unfold after the death of the body, and some of that evolution continues forward, and there's elevation and healing that takes place. And other consciousnesses, they're slower and they're more troubled. And so, the troubled dead can really play a significant role in our lives. And this is not to scare people, but it is the reality, and or it's a reality. And when we have the tools and we have the framework and we have the ritual safety and we have, a practitioner to help hold and anchor the energy and the ritual space, you can explore those troubled energies in a safe way. And in my experience, oftentimes, more often than not, those energies are seeking attention. There's something that's needed
Right.
there. Yeah, there's something that's
Yes,
needed, and
yes.
it's not um, it's not necessarily, evil. It's annoying. And yes, evil exists, but there is more of this sort of like annoying. It can be it can be uncomfortable. It can be scary at times, when the troubled dead are infringing on our personal space. But it's manageable. It really is manageable. So what you're speaking to really does tie into the ancestral work, because there's a whole spectrum of health and wellness that exists within the ancestral realm.
Wow. And this is also part of the work you do as a death doula?
So the ancestral healing is, obviously it ties in, but working as a death doula really, my intent is to enter a space, enter into a space with somebody completely neutral, and to really support them in what their belief systems are, and to center them and their spirituality, or their religious, their religious belief systems. But, always in the background for myself, there's the ancestors, and so I also hold that, personally, privately when I am, engaging in death doula work.
Your work as a death doula, would that include guiding the person, which is not a person to me, to clarity, to understanding, getting to the space of pure consciousness so they feel free?
Ah, yeah. So absolutely, if those conversations come up and, and the person who is in the dying process is open to having those talks or instigates those conversations, then absolutely I would have, those conversations and ask lots of questions. I would ask lots and lots
Hmm.
of questions.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
What a beautiful work. The exploration of life and death, that to me is one and the same. I don't see a difference. A lot of times I say, my husband sometimes he says, he talks a lot about death. It's almost in a fearful way. And I tell him, what about if we were already dead? Think about it, if this was already death itself. And he kind of laughs and brushes it off and all, but I guess I'm not kidding about that. Well, life and death, I really don't see them being opposites. So it's just another change, isn't it?
It is.
Another
It
movement
is. It
within
is. Yeah,
consciousness.
absolutely. Yeah, I think it's definitely another initiation. It's another rite of passage. And I think it's Eckhart Tolle that says, birth and death are 2 points within the strand of life, something like this. I'm paraphrasing, but life is continuous and birth and death are just 2 points on that continuum. Um, and so, yeah, it is yet another initiation for us.
Yeah, initiation. That's another interesting word. Initiation. It's almost like an invitation to go
Yes,
deeper, right?
yes.
And I resonated with me when reading about your work as a death doula. Oh, actually, the end of life doula, right? That you talk about that everyone, actually, this is for everyone, not just for the dying or the people who are the family members of the dying, but it could be for anyone at any age. And you said something interesting about taking off. Yeah, you say, from the moment we take our first breath, we are on a journey towards our last. And it's interesting when I read these things or hear them, it doesn't. I don't know why, but I have a smile, almost like it's yeah, that's it. It's the truth that really kind of brings joy, opens the heart, and in not the denial of the end of what is happening. There's something that within me it kind of relates to these things differently. But I know that this is not the reason, not the case with most people. Most people are very much afraid of dying, and they don't even want to talk about it. I notice that with my own family, I can't have these conversations around them. It's almost taboo to talk about death. How do you feel about that? What is your vision actually for that? Do you feel that this could change at some point in our human history?
Oh yes.
I hope so.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have hope for that.
Mm,
Because we've been there
yeah.
before,
Right.
as a global community, we've been in a space up until just recently of embracing death as a natural process, as an event that is inevitable. And I don't want to say to return to that, but to evolve into that understanding again is something that I have a lot of hope for. And the more that we embrace the idea and the reality of death, and the more that we reflect on all of the small deaths that we've had in our lives, right? Not just people dying, but the ending of a career, The ending of a friendship or a relationship. I mean, we experience small deaths all the time. And, the more that we sit with those endings, I think the more we value life and the more we are in touch with our mortality. I think um, the greater our desire is to live and to live fully and to take risks and to be curious and to be open and to be grateful. And so, so much about death is really about life. It's really
Yes.
living.
So true, Jen. Another beautiful insight, true to my heart. Yes, yes. And it's funny because the deeper we go, the more understanding we have, the more clarity arises, and the more at peace we live. And that has been definitely my experience with so much trauma and holding on to so many things. The moment I let them go, I let them go in the past and keep letting it go now. Then I see that there's more space for joy, for peace, and it's almost like a sense of completeness. That's what it feels like. Everything that's happening, like for example, even not finishing a meal, it's already complete. If I died in the middle of it, that's that was a complete experience. And there's this feeling of satisfaction, of fulfillment. So that's I don't know. It feels like a practice, but at some point, it becomes a realization. Like, okay, this is how wonderful to be here. Whatever this is, and whatever is happening, it's just amazing. Yeah, there's that sense of awe. Yeah, it's curiosity, isn't it? It's almost like a child looking through the lens of I remember being a child and really seeing life that way. Everything was beautiful, wonderful, and even the harsh stuff until we start to kind of overthink, I guess, and try to correct things. I think that's what I did as a child too. I became very much, my parents were very violent, and I tried to correct the violence and make them peaceful. And that's when I suffered a lot more. So that's just fascinating to me that we can even have conversations about these things. It's amazing. Would you like to make, I know I have a lot of other comments that I made here, some notes that I made, and I wanted to mention them about your services. But is there anything else that you left unsaid, Jen, for today's conversation? Anything you'd like to mention? Add, really?
Yeah. I think, I feel very grateful for having this conversation and for being able to openly talk about, the ancestral, the ancestral healing and the ancestral realm, and to really pull the ancestors into this conversation. And, speaking about death is difficult, and there's a lot of charge around it, and it's painful, and I understand and hold space for that. And also um, being able to see the beauty and the joy in it. And I really appreciate how you have opened up the conversation to that and for holding that. So really, I have nothing to add other than that. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for this opportunity and for this discussion.
Yes, I feel the same way. Every time I have a guest who says yes to talk to me about these topics, it's gratitude. It's almost like I use the word appreciation for some reason, and I say deep appreciation, but they're all one thing. It's just that sense of togetherness, isn't it? It's almost like, oh, we are sharing one thing. We are exposing here the underlying reality of that holds all of this together. That's what it feels like. It feels very sacred. But the way I see it, I try not to make sacred space just one specific moment in time or an experience. I kind of always try to bring that sacredness to everything that I
Yes.
do, the thoughts, I mean, everything. And it doesn't always work. But, right? Like we try to be
Yeah.
happy with everything and be peaceful with, but it's all part of it, isn't it, Jen?
It certainly is. It certainly is. And life is
Fun.
beautiful and messy.
Yes, and fun in that sense. Yes. when we are aware, right? That's messy, but it can be fun as well.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to mention some of the services that you offer that I looking on your website. I found them. Under Ancestor Lineage Repair, you offer Beginner's Path, The Long Road, The Collective Journey, and support sessions. I love the way everything's so organized and easy to read and clear. And then you also have services under spiritual mentorship. And then you have spiritual cultivation, spiritual tending, and mentorship support sessions. I apologize for the noise. Today's noise around my house. It's part of the fun too. It's part of this too, right? The conversation we came.
Exactly.
I have to mention this. One day I was trying to meditate and do some stretching, breathing exercise outside my patio, and then I heard on the other side neighbor. He was coughing really hard and making a lot of noise. And I remember something in me becoming very distracted and not in a good way. And it's like, gosh, I has to cough right now. Does he have to make this noise right now? I'm trying to meditate here. And then there happened, I think, probably 3 times. And then one day I went back, the same thing happened. And something changed or something else came along and said, it's wonderful that you can hear the sounds. That's the reason you can hear the beautiful meditation music and the sound of the birds. But that's because you can hear. You have that ability. So with that comes everything that can be heard. And that's when it changed. And I said, oh, I wish him well. The man he was coughing because he was not well. So I started kind of praying for him and just meditating more on him getting better without, of course, though I don't know the man, but it's one of my practices to always be aware and kind and that the underlying reality, everything's one here, so there's no separation. So automatically by doing that every day as a practice, these insights, they come along, out of nowhere. I mean, I had to share this, I guess.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. And then you also have lots of programs under the End of Life Doula, Inquiry, Advanced Planning, Legacy Project, Vigil preparation, Threshold Support, and Grief and Beyond. So thank you so much again for your beautiful presence in this reality, Jen. Thank you for being open to life.
Thank you. You as well. Thank you so much, Valeria.
And before we say goodbye for today, where's the best place to find more information about you and your services?
Oh, yes. Please go to my website, which is jenhudziec.com.
Yeah, I do have here. So I'll have that link on your website profile, the interview profile. Is there anything else you would like to leave the audience with, whoever listens to this? Let's say, what's one message? If you could leave with them just one message, what would that be?
One message for this day, I think. Just to remember that we all come from people who dreamed us into reality. And although the few generations back from us may hold a lot of pain and a lot of charge and a lot of trauma, there is goodness in every single one of our lineages. And there are gifts and there are blessings and there's beauty that we embody. And so my encouragement is to remember that you have many, 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 many people and a large, large web of consciousness that really is holding you all the time.
Yes. Beautiful message on not being alone and not feeling alone. Thank you so much again. We'll talk soon. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Jen Hudziec and her work, please visit jenhudziec.com.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.